Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your source material, all the articles, the research, your notes, and really turn them into actionable, fascinating insights that are tailored just for you.
And today we are really getting into a big one.
Oh yeah, we are deep diving into one of the most stubborn and I think limiting narratives in all of learning. It's that pervasive myth that if you didn't master a new language as a child, you were basically fighting a losing battle.
It is the single most common barrier to entry for adult language learners. It really is. That immediate assumption that children are the, undisputed champions.
Right. They're blessed with this ability for what people call effortless absorption.
Seemingly effortless, yes. And critically, that accent-free pronunciation, we hear that narrative everywhere. And the instinct for so many people is to just immediately write off their own capacity.
Well, the mission of this deep dive is to completely dismantle that myth, starting right now. You do not need to sell yourself short.
Not at all.
We are here to show you exactly why, as an adult, you actually possess a unique and really powerful cognitive toolkit. We're talking about learning strengths that children simply lack.
Yes.
This isn't about, wallowing in missed opportunities. This is about recognizing the immense leverage you already hold.
Precisely. And our exploration today, it's specifically tailored for you, the adult learner, to understand your advanced cognitive advantages.
And most importantly, how to apply them.
Most critically, yes, how to apply them.
Yeah.
We are moving past the common comparisons and focusing entirely on strategic advantage and optimization. What does the neuroscience actually say about why you should be learning right now?
All right, let's start there. Let's start with the hard science, the fundamental difference in brain structure. When a child starts acquiring a language, we often use that metaphor. We call their brain a sponge.
We do.
From a developmental perspective, what does that actually mean?
It means the architecture itself is still under construction. The child's brain is what we call highly plastic. It's optimized for building these fundamental frameworks from scratch.
Okay.
So it acts like that sponge, absorbing language implicitly. This is the key word. They don't need conscious rules.
So they're not sitting there thinking about verb tenses.
Not at all. They are building neural structures designed to categorize sounds, derive grammatical patterns, and map meaning purely through constant unconscious exposure. They're building a brand new structure from the ground up.
A structure that's designed to accommodate what is many sounds and rules as possible.
Exactly. The maximum number of phonetic and grammatical possibilities. It's wide open.
That sounds marvelous, but here's where we need to pivot to the adult advantage. Our brains, they're fully developed. We're already wired, optimized, and, incredibly efficient in our native language. So when we approach, say, Japanese or Italian, we're not hitting the reset button. What is actually happening in the adult brain?
We're engaging in a process of modification, not construction. We are modifying existing wiring.
Okay, let that modify.
Think of your native language not as just a single highway, but as an incredibly complex, high-speed rail network. It's efficient, it's powerful, and it's deeply, deeply entrenched.
Right.
A child is building their own brand new track system parallel to yours. You, the adult, are adding new, complex interchange points, parallel lanes, and off-ramps to the existing structure.
So I really want to lean in that metaphor for a second.
Jay.
So when we try to learn new vocabulary, we aren't creating a completely new storage file in our brain.
No.
We're just creating an alias or a shortcut to an existing, fully defined concept we already have.
Exactly. And because we are modifying, our learning process is fundamentally different. It forces the adult to rely much more heavily on explicit learning.
Okay, let's clearly define that. Why is explicit learning, which, let's be honest, can often feel clunky or slow, why is that actually the adult's powerful tool?
Explicit learning involves conscious attention and intellectual effort. It means we rely on the logical framework of the language, the grammatical rules, the structure, the conjugation tables, all that stuff.
The textbook stuff.
The textbook stuff, yes. We use deduction, logic, and often, at least initially, translation. A child is just absorbing the sound and the context. An adult is engaging the high-level analytical parts of the brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, to understand the mechanism of the language.
I think so many adult learners feel defeated by this conscious effort, though. They feel like they should be effortlessly absorbing, like a kid. And when they have to sit down with a textbook and memorize noun declensions, they just feel like they're failing.
And that is the absolute core misunderstanding we need to fix. The sources reveal that this less natural feeling is precisely the strategic advantage.
So the struggle is actually the strength.
In a way, yes. Your ability to use logic, to analyze patterns, and to understand the why of a sentence structure. That's a highly sophisticated, high-speed tool that a young child just cannot utilize.
So they use language intuitively.
And you, the adult, can understand the systemic blueprint of the language, which is far, far more efficient for structure building.
Speaking of efficiency, this feeds directly into a really surprising finding about pace. The myth suggests children just immediately zoom ahead of us.
Right.
But the research suggests that adults often initially learn faster than young children, especially in, like, formal, structured settings.
This is a crucial data point that absolutely shreds the common narrative. It's so important to grasp this.
So why? Why is this initial pace advantage so pronounced?
It's because formal language curricula, the way classes are typically taught in high school or university, they're actually designed for analytical, explicit learning. They present rules and vocabulary in a logical, structured progression.
Wait, so the format itself is literally optimized for the adult brain?
Precisely. That adult capacity for deliberate, focused, explicit learning allows them to grasp complex grammar and vast amounts of vocabulary much, much faster than a child.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, a child might require, say, 2 years of immersive experience to intuitively deduce the difference between, let's say, the imperfect and the preterite tense in Spanish.
Okay, that's a classic one.
It is. An adult, on the other hand, can read a clear explanation, see 20 examples, and grasp the core logical distinction in an hour. The child gets there, but the adult's path is a direct line.
So while we can concede that children, especially those exposed really early, usually have the edge in pronunciation, and that's a very visible auditory win.
It is. It's what everyone notices first.
Adults are consistently excelling in the structural component. The sources specifically noted that while children excel in pronunciation, adults often grasp grammar more effectively. That is a massive head start.
And this grammatical mastery is purely a function of our matured cognitive toolkit. We've developed executive functions.
What does that mean in this context?
It means we have the mental resources to categorize abstract rules, to compare structures, and to apply them systematically. A child relies on pattern correlation, which is powerful, but it's also very slow. An adult processes those same patterns as a set of logical instructions, which is rapid and deliberate.
Okay, let's get really specific then. Let's identify exactly what those strategic tools are that children cannot utilize yet.
Okay, the first and probably biggest one is sophisticated pattern analysis. We don't just hear the language, we observe its architecture.
We're like linguistic detectives.
That's a great way to put it. We form racket hypotheses and then we test those hypotheses in conversation. For instance, you might notice that every time a direct object is used with the particular verb, the sentence structure flips in a way that's not native to you.
And you can actually think about that consciously.
Yes, you analyze it, you formulate a rule in your head, and then you consciously apply it. That's a high-level cognitive process.
And crucially, we can retain detailed explanations. That massive shortcut, the ability to just be told why something is the way it is, that's priceless.
Absolutely. Think of trying to learn a sport. The child learns through pure repetitive movement and correction from a coach. The adult can read the manual, understand the biomechanics, and apply the theory to their practice immediately.
That's a great analogy.
Furthermore, we can strategically apply complex learning techniques. Things like advanced memory systems, creating elaborate mnemonics for vocabulary acquisition.
Which a kid would never do.
Never. Or using advanced software to drill specific complex grammar structures that you've identified as a weakness.
So it's really the difference between learning to fly an airplane by just sitting in the cockpit and playing with the controls versus first studying aerodynamics.
Exactly. Understanding the 4 forces of flight and then practicing according to a systematic manual.
The kid might develop those instinctual reflexes faster, but the adult knows exactly why the plane flies.
And can therefore troubleshoot a mechanical failure. That explicit foundational understanding pays huge dividends when the complexity of the language increases later on.
And that systemic understanding, I would imagine, it gives the adult confidence.
It does. Knowing why a sentence is structured correctly allows you to speak with greater structural integrity, even if your pronunciation isn't perfect yet. You have a solid scaffold to hang new vocabulary on.
That's a fantastic transition because our foundation isn't just about the wiring of the brain. It's about the content we already have stored in that wiring. Which brings us to section 2, the adult learner's wealth of existing knowledge and experience.
This is, I think, the adult's most overlooked, yet potentially most potent leverage point.
So let's consider the state of the learner. A child approaches language with a genuine blank slate, right? At least concerning life concepts.
A total blank slate. Every single idea, from the name of an emotion like melancholy to the conceptual function of taxation, it all must be acquired and labeled for the very first time.
Meanwhile, the adult is walking in with a, quote, rich tapestry of concepts and an existing vocabulary. We have already done the hardest part of language learning, which is conceptualizing the world. We already know what a noun is, what causality means, the difference between assertion and speculation.
Indeed. And having already mastered one, or perhaps several, languages provides an intrinsic metalinguistic insight into the general mechanics of language itself.
What do you mean by metalinguistic?
You understand language about language. You already know that languages have registers formal and informal. You understand connotation versus denotation. You're not learning language from ground zero. You are learning language 2.0, equipped with a foundational understanding of communication theory.
And that mastery allows us to make these powerful connections almost instantly. So let's get practical here. What are the day-to-day advantages of this connection-making ability?
Well, the most immediate connections are cross-linguistic. If you speak English and you start learning a Romance language, for example, the discovery of cognates is just a massive cognitive shortcut.
Right. Words that sound the same and mean the same.
Exactly. Recognizing that nation in English relates to nationens in Spanish or nation in French means you've instantly acquired hundreds, maybe thousands, of high-frequency words without any brute force memorization. We recognize similarities between new vocabulary and known words in other languages constantly.
But wait, that can be a double-edged sword, can't it? Doesn't this deep-seated knowledge sometimes lead us astray with what they call false friends?
Absolutely.
Words that look the same but mean something completely different.
Absolutely. And that is where the adult advantage of explicit learning circles right back around.
Okay, how so?
A child might be confused by an error, like a false friend, but they won't recognize why it's an error in a systematic way. They just know they were corrected.
They don't have the context.
An adult, having that metalinguistic awareness, can isolate the false friend like embarazada in Spanish, meaning pregnant, not embarrassed, and create a specific rule or a mnemonic to override that instinctual connection.
So we can manage and mitigate these cognitive traps because we understand the concept of linguistic interference itself.
Precisely. We can also map new grammatical structures onto existing native language patterns. This gives us an immediate understanding of function, even if the form itself is foreign.
Can you give an example of that? That's a bit abstract.
Sure. Let's say you're learning a language with an agglutinative case system, like Turkish or Finnish. You immediately recognize that this system's function is similar to the prepositions or word order rules in your native tongue.
Okay, so it's marking grammatical roles.
It's marking grammatical roles, exactly. You understand the function of possession, location, or temporality immediately, even if the new language uses suffixes or prefixes to convey it. This allows for a really rapid assimilation and application of these complex structures.
This conceptual advantage must become incredibly pronounced when you're dealing with complex vocabulary. This is a point I think is often missed.
It really is.
The adult already understands complex ideas in philosophy, business, technology.
This is a huge speed advantage, especially for professional learners. Imagine an engineer learning German. They already know the entire ecosystem of concepts surrounding thermodynamics, material science, and project management. They don't have to spend years acquiring the intellectual concept of project management in German.
They just have to learn the new label for it.
They only have to acquire the German label, which is, conveniently, project management.
Whereas the child is simultaneously wrestling with the abstract concept of thermodynamics for the very first time and trying to find the linguistic handle for it in their new language.
It's a single step for the adult, and maybe 3 or 4 steps for the child. The adult simply swaps out the file name on an established, comprehensive folder of knowledge.
And that shortcut in acquiring high-level abstract concepts means the adult can pivot really quickly from basic conversational competence to engaging in sophisticated, meaningful communication in their field.
Incredibly quickly.
Now let's talk about the study advantage, focus, and discipline. This is where adult life experience truly becomes a highly effective learning lever.
Yes, language educators consistently report that adults bring these unique non-cognitive strengths to the table, specifically a stronger focus and life experience.
This isn't an innate language skill then.
No, it's a life skill that's being applied to language acquisition. We know how to set priorities, manage complex schedules, and, crucially, delay gratification.
I have to play the skeptic here, though. That's fantastic in theory, but when I get home after a 10-hour workday, where does this stronger focus and discipline magically appear? My attention is completely shot.
That's a completely fair question, and it highlights the difference between innate discipline and practiced discipline.
Okay.
The adult advantage isn't that we never get tired or distracted, it's that we understand the value of incremental progress and can manage our time strategically.
So it's about the quality, not the quantity of time.
Exactly. We can allocate 30 minutes of high focus time, maybe just to drill irregular verb conjugations, a task a child would find unbearably tedious and would quickly abandon.
Right. The adult can persist through that difficulty because they understand the value of the long-term payoff, even when the immediate task is unpleasant.
Exactly. And this manifests in robust study habits. The ability to schedule and adhere to regular practice, whether it's at 6 a.m. or 10 p.m., that's a developed executive function. A child requires the material to be almost entirely fun and implicitly engaging,
And we, the adults, can engage in sustained, effortful study.
which is the most efficient way to acquire explicit knowledge.
And that self-reflection piece you mentioned earlier, that's key here too.
Yeah.
If I'm struggling with, say, the subjunctive tense,
Another classic.
I don't just feel confused. I can identify that as the weak spot.
Mm-hmm.
I can diagnose my own error pattern and then strategically allocate resources to fix that exact problem.
Like a specific app or a tutor session or just a focused chapter review.
Exactly. This targeted attack is so much more efficient.
It is. We move from confusion to diagnosis to prescription to practice systematically. That persistence is the fuel for systematic learning. We override the instant gratification impulse that's required for effective deep study. We understand those 20 minutes of daily flashcards are the non-negotiable step toward the long-term goal.
Okay, so if Section 2 was about the adult toolkit, Section 3 is really about the engine that drives it, motivation.
Mm.
Our sources refer to strong motivation not just as a nice-to-have, but as a, quote, success multiplier in language learning.
Motivation truly is the non-cognitive variable that frequently overrides any perceived age constraints. But the crucial distinction here is the type of motivation that adults possess.
Which is inherently more durable.
More durable and more powerful than what typically drives a child.
So define adult motivation for us here. What makes it so resilient?
Adult motivation is overwhelmingly intrinsic. It's driven by clear choice or necessity. It's tied to deeply felt life objectives.
Like career advancement.
Career advancement, immigration, a personal interest in literature, or connecting intimately with a partner's family. This high-stakes, clear purpose provides an intrinsic fuel that children often lack.
Right. Children are generally in language classes that were chosen for them. Their motivation is often extrinsic.
What do you mean by that?
You know, getting a good grade, avoiding punishment, getting parental approval.
And extrinsic motivation, while it can be useful, is fragile. If the reward disappears, the effort often collapses.
But adult intrinsic motivation, because it's based on achieving a real-life goal, it's constant.
It's constant. It provides profound resilience when you're facing that inevitable frustration.
And that clarity of purpose transforms the learning process from, just a school subject into a measurable, goal-oriented project.
Exactly. We can harness that goal-oriented learning incredibly effectively. Let's take the career advancement example again.
Okay.
If your goal is to land that international assignment, every new phrase you master, every successful cross-cultural communication you have is a measurable step toward that goal.
And that functions as a powerful incentive.
A very powerful incentive. The linguistic success is immediately validated by real-world progress.
It transforms the abstract task of learning Spanish into the concrete task of preparing for the Madrid office meeting. That focus provides the necessary mental armor to persist when verb conjugations just feel overwhelming.
And this purpose provides resilience, and that resilience is intimately connected to emotional maturity, which is another crucial adult tool for learning.
How does emotional maturity specifically help us learn better? Because I have to admit, I still feel deeply embarrassed and frustrated when I can't articulate a simple idea.
That feeling is universal, but emotional maturity means you have the capacity to meta-manage that state.
To manage the feeling about the feeling.
Precisely. You can analyze the feeling. I am feeling intense frustration right now because I'm anxious about how others perceive my competence. You can label the emotion, understand its source.
Which is the gap between my high intellectual standard and my current linguistic ability.
Exactly. And most importantly, you can take deliberate steps to manage it.
So instead of shutting down and quitting, which is so tempting,
So tempting.
we can diagnose the emotional failure and implement a coping strategy.
Precisely. A child often just gets overwhelmed and avoids the material. An adult can say, okay, I've been staring at this grammar rule for an hour. I'm going to switch to watching a short video in the target language for 15 minutes, and then I'll come back to the grammar.
Or they might intentionally seek out a low-stakes environment.
Yes, like a private tutor or a language exchange partner, specifically to practice making mistakes without the fear of social judgment. We self-regulate the process.
That ability to actively regulate our focus, our emotion, and our pace is exactly why the source material emphasizes that when adults are highly motivated, they often outpace younger learners in progress.
It's motivation, discipline, and emotional self-awareness, creating a highly efficient, self-directed learning system.
It's efficiency squared.
It is. And we must also mention strategic resource utilization. Adults have the capacity and often the means to access and select varied resources based on a diagnosed need.
And this isn't just about having money to buy books or apps. It's about having the critical judgment to know which resources will be most effective for you.
Exactly. An adult can assess a resource based on its pedagogical method. They can decide, okay, this textbook is great for explicit grammar, but I need a resource that gives me purely implicit input for my listening practice.
And then they mix and match.
They strategically mix online courses, private coaching for immediate feedback, immersion travel, and self-study. They curate an entire bespoke learning curriculum designed for maximum efficacy. That high-level strategic planning is utterly unavailable to a child.
Okay, so we've established a really formidable adult toolkit, but we have to be intellectually honest here. Every superhero has an Achilles heel, or at least a challenge that requires some extra effort. Let's shift our focus now to the two major hurdles that adults face and how we can conquer them using our unique leverage.
And we have to start with the big one, pronunciation.
The accent.
The accent. It is an undeniable physiological reality that adults may have to work significantly harder on pronunciation and might never completely eliminate an accent, especially if learning starts after the early teenage years, what is often called the critical period.
That critical period hypothesis is what fuels this entire myth that adults can't succeed. Can you break down the neuroscience behind why our pronunciation struggles so much?
There are two main factors at play. First, the physical, the musculature of the mouth and your vocal apparatus. It hardens and adapts to your native language over decades.
So it's literally muscle memory.
It's muscle memory. Producing a non-native sound, like a rolled R or a specific vowel sound, requires motor skills that haven't been routinely used since infancy.
And what's the second factor?
Second, and this is arguably more important, is the auditory filter. Our brains categorize and filter sound, focusing only on the phonemes, the distinct units of sound that are necessary for a native tongue.
So if my native English doesn't use the phone U, like in German or French, my ear literally stops registering it as a unique sound, and my mouth forgets how to make it. Is that right?
That's a simplified but, yes, accurate way of putting it. The auditory filter becomes highly efficient for your native language, but also rigid. Modifying that filter and retraining the vocal tract requires immense conscious effort and focused repetition.
Effort that children don't need to exert because their systems are still flexible in acquiring those necessary filters.
They're just downloading everything.
So the goal must be reframed then. This is key. An accent does not equate to a lack of fluency or intelligence. The focus has to be on being clear and communicative.
Absolutely vital. An accent simply reveals your language journey, not your competence. Many of the most respected international figures operate fluently with distinct accents. We have to shift the goal from native perfection to intelligibility and richness of expression.
Okay, now for the emotional hurdle. Self-consciousness. Adults often worry about making mistakes far, far more than children do. This creates a massive internal block.
It creates a debilitating reluctance to practice, which is the exact opposite of what's needed to improve.
Why are we so afraid?
Well, adults associate competence with maturity, When we struggle to form a basic sentence, it feels like a temporary reduction in our intellectual standing.
Like we sound like a child.
Exactly. We are used to being capable, professional, and articulate. To stand nakedly exposed as a beginner is terrifying. A child simply falls, dusts themselves off, and tries again because their social status isn't tied to flawless execution.
That social and professional pressure is immense. So how do we leverage the adult brain to overcome this psychological barrier?
By using conscious practice and repetition. Because we learn explicitly, we can tackle this fear head-on by creating controlled environments for failure.
We have to plan to fail.
In a way, yes. We have to understand that mistakes are not embarrassing flaws. They are data points. They are information we can use.
And we can strategically isolate the tricky parts. The adult brain can still learn new pronunciation, but the source stresses it requires conscious repetition.
It requires systematic, effortful work, which is perfectly suited to the focused adult mind. You can't just wait for osmosis. You have to deliberately isolate the problematic sound or grammatical structure and drill it until the conscious rule starts to embed itself subconsciously.
This leads directly to something you mentioned, intentional mimicry, which is a sophisticated diagnostic skill unique to adults.
Yes. A child mimics unconsciously as part of their absorption process. An adult engages in intentional mimicry as a systematic diagnostic process.
How does that look in practice?
We can use tools like spectrograms or phonetic apps to visualize exactly where our mouth position is wrong, or we can actively seek direct, targeted feedback from a teacher or a native speaker on one specific sound.
We can even record ourselves, listen back, compare to a native speaker, and calculate the precise delta, the exact acoustic difference between our sound and theirs.
Yes. That entire process diagnosis, prescription practice, feedback, and refinement is a highly conscious, logical, and incredibly powerful learning loop.
So it transforms pronunciation from this frustrating, vague barrier
Into a solvable technical challenge. You're applying your analytical brain and your high-level executive function to a motor skill and an auditory challenge. You are leveraging your understanding of the mechanics of learning to systematically bypass the perceived limitations of age.
Okay, so we've covered the wiring, the knowledge base, the motivation, and the necessary countermeasures for the challenges. Let's bring it all home. If a child achieves fluency through this implicit natural absorption, what does the successful adult path look like?
The adult path is one of systematic fluency. The bottom line conclusion, supported by all the source materials, that adults absolutely can and do become fluent, and they achieve this through a more structured, systematic process.
In this systematic understanding, knowing why the language works,
Yeah.
you're saying that's a massive specific advantage.
It is.
Why is knowing the mechanism better than just implicitly using the language? It seems like it would be slower.
In the moment, maybe. But the systematic framework provides robustness. Implicit knowledge, when you're faced with a high cognitive load or stress, or you encounter low-frequency grammatical structures, it can often collapse or lead to guessing.
Whereas the systematic learner,
The systematic learner, however, can always appeal back to the explicit rules they've mastered. If they encounter a bizarrely irregular plural form, they can logically deduce its meaning based on the framework they understand. They can reason their way through complexity rather than just waiting for intuition to kick in.
that makes perfect sense. Intuition is slow to build, but the rulebook is instantly accessible in your memory. This brings us to the key strategy for the listener, the best both worlds strategy.
This is the practical essence of leveraging your adulthood. You must take full advantage of your explicit learning strength by first mastering the rules and the patterns.
So study the grammar charts, understand the why.
Yes, and then, and this is the crucial step, you must immediately and aggressively practice those rules and patterns in a real-life context.
So we should not shy away from structured grammar study. We should actually embrace the definitions, the charts, and the systematic structure, because that is the foundation that our adult brain builds best.
Yes, but that foundation is inert without usage. The goal is to internalize the explicit rules through repetition in context until they start moving toward implicit retrieval.
Can you give an analogy for that?
Think of learning to drive a stick shift. You start by explicitly thinking, okay, clutch, shift, gas. You use your conscious analytical brain to build the road.
Right, it's very mechanical.
And you drive on that road repeatedly until you don't have to think about the route anymore. It becomes habit. It moves from the prefrontal cortex to the motor skill centers.
That disciplined practice leads directly to the natural habit. And the proof that this works is I mean, it's everywhere.
It really is.
The source material reminds us that plenty of highly successful people become fluent as adults. International professionals, diplomats, famous polyglots. Age is not a barrier, just a different path.
It's a powerful validation. The global workforce is full of adults who relocated in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and are now successfully operating in a second or third language. The systematic, motivated approach works, and in many professional contexts, it works faster than waiting for pure immersion to yield results.
So, in summary, children absorb language naturally, implicitly, but adults excel at structured learning and can leverage strategies that children don't have yet. We use structure to create speed.
We use our focus, our discipline, and our pre-existing knowledge to create an artificial efficiency that bypasses the need for the early, prolonged developmental flexibility that children enjoy.
Okay, now let's wrap up with the ultimate payoff, the bonus cognitive benefits. Beyond fluency, what does this intense conscious effort do for our brains?
This is perhaps the most exciting finding in the research. It has consistently shown tangible, measurable cognitive improvements for adult language learners.
What kind of improvements?
Well, this type of multifaceted, high-demand task improves executive functions. Specifically, studies have shown enhanced working memory, improved task-switching ability, and, critically, the potential to stave off brain aging.
Stave off brain aging. That is a remarkable return on investment for learning some French.
It is.
How does this systematic, effortful process actually translate into neurological protection?
It increases what neurologists call cognitive reserve. Every time you force your brain to switch between language systems, which requires actively inhibiting one language while activating the other, you are intensely exercising your executive function.
So it's like a workout for the brain's control center.
Exactly. Every time you consciously categorize a new abstract vocabulary item or self-correct a complex grammatical error, you are forcing neural pathways to fire in new, complex, and highly connected patterns.
So we're increasing brain plasticity
Yeah.
simply by using those adult learning advantages we just discussed, the analysis, the focus, the strategic approach.
Think of it as intense resistance training for the brain. It builds density and efficiency in the cognitive architecture. By engaging in this systematic, demanding process, you are strengthening the neural network, which makes it more resilient against age-related decline.
So you're essentially building a buffer against future cognitive challenges.
A very significant one.
So the effort doesn't just pay off in the ability to travel freely or advance professionally. It pays off in long-term neurological health, improved decision-making, and superior memory function.
It transforms language learning from a hobby into a powerful, intentional form of self-improvement and cognitive training.
All right, let's synthesize this for everyone listening.
Let's do it. Let's quickly synthesize the core adult strengths you must internalize. Focus, logical reasoning, self-discipline, a rich wealth of life experience, and the emotional capacity to self-reflect and learn how to learn. These are the advanced tools you already possess.
Stop envying the child's sponge. You need to embrace your systematic approach. Use your existing knowledge as a massive conceptual shortcut.
And don't be afraid of the grammar rules. They are your structural map.
And please, don't worry about the accent. Focus relentlessly on being clear, correct, and communicative. Your age is not a limitation. It is your ultimate strategic advantage.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to carry forward into your studies.
Okay.
If the intense, explicit effort required to modify existing brain wiring, paired with a powerful intrinsic motivation, demonstrably leads to cognitive benefits like staving off aging and improving memory, what new dimension does that give your learning?
You're not just learning a language. You are intentionally engineering your brain for long-term health and plasticity. Go explore the patterns, build that systematic understanding, and embrace your adult cognitive edge. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.